bullet slammed through the barn boards, and the mule inside answered with a ruined, gurgling cry. And my whole body went cold in one instant, because the mule's pain meant men were close, and men that close meant Aunt Selma could already be in their hands. Dust flew off the barn wall in a little brown cloud and drifted toward me, and I swallowed it by mistake. It packed my throat. My eyes watered hard enough to sting. I dropped to my knees without deciding to. Palms flattened the yard dirt like I was praying to the ground. The earth was warm from sun and smelled of old manure and trampled straw. Another shot cracked, closer this time, and something splintered at my left, a bite of wood and bark that slapped my cheek. I flinched so fast I nearly fell forward on my face. For a breath or two I couldn't hear anything but the loud rush of my own blood. Then the mule cried again, a wet, hiccuping sound, and the noise dragged me back into my skin. I remember a ridiculous thought coming clean and bright in the middle of it, like a coin flashing in mud. I didn't mend the gate hinge this morning. I promised I would. I walked past it, heard it complain, and told myself I'd do it after breakfast. Now it creaked behind me when the wind pushed it, slow and steady, as if it was speaking up to tell the whole country where I knelt. I pushed up, hands shaking, and ran for the house. My boots slipped in chicken droppings and soft mud from the water barrel that always leaked. The yard swung sideways in my sight from how hard my heart was pounding. I shouted her name, and the first shout came out strong. Then the next one broke like my throat had cracked. Aunt Selma. I called, and it sounded like I was calling down a well. Inside the house the light was wrong, dim and yellowed. Shutters were half drawn to keep out the glare, and the air held that sour, cold ash smell from last night's fire. I could hear a fly ticking against a window. My breath was loud, desperate, like a bellows. I moved room to room too fast. Pantry, bedroom, the little corner where she kept her sewing, hands out as if I could feel her hiding in the air. Aunt Selma, I said again, softer now, because I had the foolish notion the house might help me if I spoke gentle, as if wood and plaster might guide my words to her like a messenger. Nothing. My chest burned, not from running, but from the picture my mind kept throwing up, the bedroom floor with a smear of red where she'd stood, as if she'd been cut down and dragged away. I shook my head hard like that could throw the thought out. I checked under the table where she sometimes crouched when thunder made her jump. I yanked open the closet. Only blankets and the smell of soap and cedar. I stumbled back out into the yard, blinking against the sun. The brightness stabbed behind my eyes. That's when I saw them. 5 riders strung along my fence like they belonged there, hats low, rifles resting easy. Their horses shifted and blew, leather creaking with every small movement, tails flicking at flies. One man had his head thrown back laughing, like he'd heard a joke in church and didn't care who it offended. The middle rider had a dark beard and a scar that pulled one side of his mouth up when he smiled. Garin Pike. I knew him without anyone needing to announce it. His name had been breathed in dry gulches and behind saloon doors the way folks talk about rattlers, quiet, cautious, like saying it might bring him nearer. I stood there with my hands half raised, the way you stand when you've stepped into a room and realized you're not welcome. My rifle leaned against the porch post behind my shoulder. I could feel its nearness like a memory pressing between my shoulder blades. My fingers twitched. The old part of me, young and stupid and convinced the world was made to be pushed, rose up wanting to snatch it. But another part rose too, heavier, slower, and it pinned me in place. That part had lived in me since the winter my brother froze in a canyon because I chose the wrong draw. Since then, every choice I made had weighed on it. I didn't get to be quick anymore. I didn't get to be reckless. Well now, Pike called, voice easy, friendly even, like we were neighbors leaning on a fence to talk about rain. You came out quick enough. Thought you might hide. My mouth was so dry the words felt like they scraped my tongue on the way out. Where is she? He lifted his shoulders, still smiling. Your woman. She's safe enough. For now. The phrase for now turned my stomach. It made everything taste like iron. I took a step toward them before I knew my legs had moved, and one of his men lifted a rifle, not aiming, not even trying, just letting me see how simple it would be to put me down. I stopped. The yard went still except for the horses and the wash line tugging in the breeze. Aunt Selma's blue dress hung there, snapping hard, like a flag someone meant to claim. You want me, I said, forcing the words out steady. You don't want her. That depends, Pike said, and spat into the dust like the ground offended him. We hear tell you've been helping folks hide their stock from the drive south, making yourself a little nuisance. Nuisance. The word almost made me laugh, not because it was funny but because it was so small compared to what it meant. I hadn't set out to be a nuisance. I just watched too many families watch their last cow vanish down the trail with men like Pike counting profit. I'd seen children with hollow faces. I'd seen women boil bones twice to get one more cup of broth. I won't do it again, I said, and the lie tasted sour the instant it left me. My own stomach knew it. Pike knew it. The man laughing by the fence stopped laughing and just watched. Pike swung down from his horse and walked toward me. His boots crushed gravel. Up close he smelled of sweat and tobacco and horse oil, sharp, stale, and certain. He stopped a few paces away, close enough I could see the yellow flecks in his eyes, close enough I could see the dried line of old blood in his scar. You ain't in a place to make promises, he said. You're in a place to make an example. He turned his head and called, not raising his voice much, like he was ordering coffee. Bring her. My chest went hollow. The yard seemed to tilt. From behind the barn 2 of his men came around, and between them was Aunt Selma. Her hair had come loose from its tie and stuck to her cheek with sweat and dust. They had her arms pinned, but she walked straight anyway, chin lifted, eyes locked on me like she was trying to hold me steady with her look. She wasn't crying. That might have been the hardest part to see. Her fear contained, her dignity clenched like a fist. Merrick, she said, and my name in her mouth was so soft it nearly took my legs out. I stepped toward her, one step, then another, slow, hands open, showing them I wasn't reaching for iron. My thoughts ran wild, tripping over each other. If I grabbed a rifle, maybe I could take one, maybe 2, before they fired. But then she would fall. And I would have done it. I would be the reason. What do you want? I asked Pike, and my voice shook despite my effort to keep it level. Pike glanced up at the sky, squinting at the sun like he was judging time. There's a bend in the canyon, 2 miles west. Narrow place. Good echo. You're going to walk there with us. When we're done, folks will understand. And her. I said. I had to swallow before the next words would come. You let her go. He smiled again, that Polskar grin. She goes free. I'm a man of my word, once my point is made. I wanted to spit in his face. I wanted to tear his throat out with my hands. But all I could feel was that old stone of guilt shifting in me, whispering this was the shape my life had been leaning toward for years, that maybe the world had been waiting to collect. All right, I said. It came out low. Let her go. Pike nodded like we'd just settled a fair bargain. One of the men shoved Aunt Selma forward. She stumbled, caught herself, and then she was in my arms, face pressed to my chest so hard I felt her breath through my shirt. I wrapped her tight, breathing in her hair, dust, soap, the faint scent of the sage she liked to crush between her fingers when she was thinking. I tried to hold that smell inside my head like a lantern flame. Don't, she whispered. Please, Merrick. We'll run. We'll hide. We'll. There isn't time, I said, and I hated my own calm. It sounded like surrender. Go to Bryn's place. Don't wait. Don't look back. Her hands gripped my shirt, fingers digging like she meant to anchor me. Then they loosened. She pulled away and looked up at me. Her eyes were bright with tears she refused to let fall. You always choose the hard road, she said. No anger. Just a tired love, that knowing. I couldn't tell her the truth, that my choices had been poisoned since the canyon winter, since my brother's last breath, since the moment I understood I'd led him wrong and survived anyway. I could only say, I chose the wrong road once. She nodded like she could hear all the rest of it without me speaking. Then she turned and walked away, back straight, hands clenched. She did not look back. That, too, might have saved me. If she'd looked back, I might have broken right then. I watched her until she disappeared down the path. Then I turned to Pike and said, Let's go. They made me walk ahead of them, hands empty, the sun hot on my neck like a hand pressing me down. My rifle stayed by the porch, useless now, and the emptiness of my hands felt wrong, like I'd stepped out of my own body. We passed low hills where sage grew thick. Our boots crushed it and released its bitter smell, sharp and clean. Flies buzzed around the horses. No one spoke. Leather creaked. The horses snorted and tossed their heads. My breath rasped in my throat, dry as paper. As we walked, my mind dragged me backward without asking permission. I saw my brother's face in the snow again, lashes rimed with ice. I heard the way he tried to joke to keep us calm, and the way his voice thinned when the cold got deeper. I remembered his hand in mine, heavy, then heavier, then not squeezing back. I remembered leaving him because I thought I could reach shelter and return with help, and the shame of that choice has never softened. The canyon rose ahead, its walls climbing up like clenched fists. The air cooled as we entered, and the light dimmed. Shadows lay across the ground in long bands. The place had a throat-like feel to it, the rock narrowing in and swallowing sound. Even the horses seemed uneasy, hooves striking stone with a hard, nervous ring. Pike motioned us to stop near the bend where the rock curved close. One of his men dismounted and looped a rope over a rock spur, testing it with a tug. The rope fibers creaked. I stared at it too long. My stomach did a slow, sick roll. "Well," Pike said, stepping in front of me, "this is as good a place as any." He studied me with his head tilted. "You got anything you want to say before we finish?" I looked up at the sun, just visible above the canyon rim, a pale slice of light against blue. It was blinding. I had to squint until my eyes watered, but I kept looking. I thought of mornings on my porch with bitter coffee and Aunt Selma humming while she kneaded dough. I thought of her hands flour-dusted, the soft crease between her brows when she worried. I didn't reach for any gun. I didn't move. I just breathed slow and said, "A good day to die for you." It wasn't bravado. It wasn't some clever line. It was the only truth I had in that moment. If I died, it would not buy Pike anything lasting. It would not make him a king. It would only add another weight to the ground he already stood on. They laughed, rough and loud, and the canyon threw the laughter back at us warped. Pike shook his head. "You always hear about fools like you," he said. "Never think you'll meet one." Maybe I was a fool. Or maybe I was simply tired of watching the world decide who deserved to breathe. They stepped closer. And then, from deeper in the canyon, a shout cut through the air like a knife. Every head turned. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The second shout came, and then the crack of a rifle snapped through the narrow space, clean and final. One of Pike's men jerked and fell, a dark flower spreading fast across his shirt. His hat rolled away and bumped against a stone. Horses screamed and reared. Hooves struck rock and threw sparks. The world. 3 figures appeared from behind a jet of stone, rifles raised. I recognized Bryn before my mind caught up with what my eyes were seeing. Aunt Selma's brother, hair wild, face hard, eyes blazing like he'd poured all his fear into anger. Beside him were 2 neighbors, men I'd shared food with and argued with over fence lines, men I never would have guessed would come into a canyon for me. Shots hammered back and forth. Smoke bloomed and hung in the air, gray and bitter. I dropped to the ground against rock as bullets chipped stone and sent dust raining into my hair. My ears rang. My tongue tasted of metal. Pike barked orders and scrambled for cover, his voice suddenly not friendly at all. His men fired back, faces tightened with panic. One horse broke loose, bolting past me so close I felt its heat and the sting of its sweat. The smell of burned powder and hot stone filled my nose. I didn't have a gun, but my hand still belonged to me. When a rider ran past, half stumbling, I lunged and caught his leg. He went down hard. The air left him with a grunt. I rolled on top of him, wrestling his rifle free. He fought, elbows sharp, but I had desperation and years of hard labor in my shoulders. I wrenched the rifle away and drove the butt into his jaw. The impact vibrated up my arms. He went limp. I rose with the rifle shaking in my hands. The weight of it steadied me in a strange way, like holding something familiar in the middle of a nightmare. I aimed without thinking, muscle remembering what my mind couldn't manage. I fired. The recoil bruised my shoulder. A moon cried out and dropped. I fired again and the sound cracked back at me from the canyon walls. Then there were fewer shots. Then silence, except for groans and horses blowing hard. Smoke drifted in thin threads, curling around the rock like ghost breath. Pike was on his knees near the rope spur, one hand clamped to his side. Blood darkened his shirt and shone wood in the light. Bryn stood over him, rifle trained, chest heaving like he'd run miles. "Don't," I heard myself say. My voice sounded strange in that space, too calm for what had just happened. "Don't do it." Bryn's head snapped toward me. His eyes were wide, what with fury and something underneath it that looked like fear he didn't want to show. "He was going to hang you," he said. "He took her." "And he didn't," I said. I took a slow step closer, keeping the rifle pointed down. He didn't, and I won't ever see her brother become what he hates. That was the unexpected turn that hit me like a blow. I wasn't pleading for Pike. I was pleading for Bryn, for the boy inside him that still wanted to be good, even when the world pushed. Pike looked up at me, his grin gone. He tried to speak and coughed instead, thick and wet. "Lucky," he rasped. "That's all you are." "Maybe," I said. I felt the old urge to finish it, to make the threat vanish forever. The rifle was heavy. The canyon was quiet. It would have been easy. And the easiest choices are the ones that haunt you longest. "We tie him," I said. "We take him in. Let the law do what it does." Bryn stared at Pike like he was staring at a snake that had bitten him. Then Bryn's shoulders dropped a fraction. He nodded once, sharp. We bound Pike's hands. We checked the wounded, friend and enemy alike, because I couldn't bear to watch another man die slow if it could be helped. My hands were slick with blood at times. The smell of it mixed with powder smoke and dust. The sun slipped lower and threw long bands of light across the canyon floor, and the day that had started with terror began to feel like it was trying to settle into something else. We walked back with Pike limping between Bryn and a neighbor. I expected to feel triumph. I expected relief. Instead, I felt hollow, as if the fear had eaten the inside of me and left only the shell. Aunt Selma was at the gate when we reached the ranch. Her face was pale until she saw me. Then it changed so fast it was like watching dawn break. She ran to me and grabbed me hard, fingers digging into my back like she was making sure I didn't dissolve. "I thought I'd lost you," she said into my shirt. Her voice shook, and now she was crying, quiet tears that soaked the cloth. "So did I," I answered, and I meant it more than any other words I'd spoken that day. That night the ranch felt too quiet, as if the world was holding its breath to see what would happen next. The barn stood scarred. The mule lay inside, wounded but alive, breathing slow. The house smelled of lamp oil and the stew a neighbor had left, rich and warm, but my stomach wouldn't take it. We sat on the porch wrapped in blankets against the cold. The stars looked sharp enough to cut. Somewhere far off a coyote yipped once, then stopped. I stared into the dark and felt the old stone of guilt shift in me again, not eased by survival, almost worsened by it. "I said something today," I told Aunt Selma. My voice was low. I said it was a good day to die. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Her hair tickled my neck. "But you didn't," she said. "No," I whispered. "And I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to carry it without it turning into pride, or debt, or something worse." She was quiet a long time. I could hear her breathing, steadying. Then she said, "Maybe you stop carrying it like punishment." I let that sit in me. It didn't fit easy. The next days came strange. Folks rode out with food, with bandages, with stories. Some wanted to shake my hand like I'd done something grand. I hated that. I didn't feel grand. I felt like a man who nearly lost everything and only kept it by the kindness of neighbors and the stubbornness of a woman who ran to her brother's house and told him the truth fast. At night I slept in scraps. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the rope looped over stone. I heard the mule's broken cry. I felt my brother's frozen hand again. One morning before dawn, I saddled my horse and rode out alone. The air was so cold it stung inside my nose. Frost silvered the sage. The sky was pale, the world quiet except for my horse's breathing and the soft clink of tack. I rode to a rise where you can see miles of empty land, and I stopped there and watched the sun come up. As the light spread, warming my face, I understood something that made my throat tight. For years I'd been waiting to die, even while I kept working and smiling and building a life. I'd been waiting because part of me believed I owed the world my life in payment for surviving when my brother didn't. The sun climbed higher, calm and uncaring. It didn't judge me. It didn't forgive me. It simply shone. When I rode back, Aunt Selma was in the yard hanging clothes. The blue dress snapped on the line. She looked up and smiled, and it was such a plain thing, such an ordinary, human thing, that it hit me harder than gunfire. This was what I'd almost thrown away. Not glory. Not revenge. Justice. Her standing there in morning light, hands busy, eyes soft. We didn't talk much about the canyon after that. Not because we were afraid, but because words felt too small. The scar on the barn wall stayed. I found I was glad it stayed. It reminded me of how close we came, and how the choice to spare a man wasn't weakness, not when it cost something. Sometimes, when the sun sits low and turns the world gold. I remember looking up at that pale slice of light in the canyon and saying what I said. I remember how steady my breath felt, how empty my hands were, how near the ending seemed. And then I look at Anselma, at the land, at the quiet work of living, and I take a slow breath that doesn't hit. Living after you've already made peace with dying is its own kind of hard road, but it is a road you can walk with someone beside you. And on certain mornings, when the air is cold, and the sun warms my face, and the day opens without asking anything of me but to be here, I find myself thinking, not with pride and not with debt, but with a kind of reluctant gratitude, that it is a good day to live.